Greetings, survivors and friends. This week's update video isn't going to be quite the usual cinematic eye candy affair that you're used to from me, as unfortunately I have some rather pressing work-related duties. Not something to moan about really, and I am grateful for it, as it does put pies on the table in the stable. But it does mean that I have to be a bit more matter-of-fact about what changes have been made to Rust this week. So without further ado, the first items on the itinerary are both a buff and a nerf. Firstly, the poor sweet muzzle break that takes the praying out of spraying got toned down a bit after Helk fiddled with it and decided that it was working a bit better than intended. The long and short of it being that now projectile velocity has been reduced by 20%, projectile distance by 25%, and the aim cone has been drastically increased. Don't cry though, as the good news is that the Eoka has been buffed. Huzzah! Mainly because Helk wasn't able to kill someone with it last week. But the buff comes in the form of a drastically decreased aim cone this time, which should help curb its projectile dysfunction somewhat. Animals are slightly less stupid this week. You won't see quite so many kangaroo impressions as they traverse the landscape. Most have increased health, won't get stuck so often, and bears and wolves are not so inclined to flee, but on the flip side, some of them have a blind spot in the rear, and damage from chickens has been nerfed too. In related news, the new nav mesh generation, which has been causing an issue for some server owners, was optimized somewhat and apparently now loads 75% faster, with a reduction in both CPU and memory usage. Shops can now be named and will show up on maps as such. They'll appear when you roll a cursor over them, but are limited to 32 characters in length, so you'll have to be fairly punchy with your sales pitch. Pooling was added to a number of frequently used items. This method basically reduces the overhead when entities are created and destroyed in the world, and so increases performance and reduces FPS drops. Anti-hack parameters have been in the spotlight this week too, and efforts are being made to tighten things up, whilst eliminating as many false positives as possible. This is something that will take a while to get right as the team fumbles around in search of the sweet spot, but hopefully will work better and better as time goes by. And if you want to report hackers, it just got a little bit easier, as the death screen will now display the name of your murderer as it appears on Steam and not in-game. Also, the F7 player selection will now show the person who last killed you at the top of the list. One more picture of the new launch site dungeon this week. Here's a view inside the rocket factory as it is at the moment, and although it's not easy to make out exactly, there are a few jumping puzzles between you and the top tier loot that will hopefully be found on the upper levels. In player movement, the focus is currently on adding reactive animations for when running, jumping and changing direction. It's just a test at the moment, so could end up in concept limbo. So I have bookmarked it, but some things that will be added are different climbing animations for when traversing rope walls left to right. The background music system is currently being overhauled. Personally, I don't play with it on, as it makes Ninja harder to detect, but when it is finished, it should be a ton better to listen to, we are reassured. And in addition, a few tweaks to sounds in general were made to tone down some of the more ear-splitting ones. Finally, we have 16 new skins this week, and as per, there will be a link to the item store in the description for you to peruse at your leisure. Apologies once again for the short but sweet delivery. Normal service will resume next week. Slap all the appropriate knobs and buttons and come and join me also on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook and Steam. I shall catch you all soon, but in the meantime, keep calm and stay rusty. Cheerio.